Time period for Grant Wood is 1930s. 1930s. Grant Wood. He is our most famous Iowan artist. So he is from Iowa. And when we look at his photos, again, Grant Wood, 1930s, or paintings, I should say, we can see that he is basically painting the landscape. Now, some of you may say, oh, that's a little too hilly for Iowa. If you get outside of central Iowa and north central Iowa, get outside of there to the east side or west side, it does get very, very hilly over by the rivers. And so we can actually see that he is being very simplified in his way. When we actually look at his paintings, they're not truly realistic. Trees don't necessarily look like that. He's actually trying to simplify those trees to basic shapes. If you also look at this, it feels like he's a little higher than what it would be if you were standing there. And so it gives you this unique perspective. This one was meant, actually used for the Iowa Quarter. It's about education and how Iowa is the leader in education. But it feels like he's always a little bit higher than what a normal person would be standing there looking at this scene. And so we see a unique perspective, a simplified perspective. He's drawing what is going on in Iowa. So his style is regionalism. Regionalism is the style. And so he was in Iowa. Thomas Hart Benton was in Missouri. They were the two main guys for regionalism. So much so that he actually started an artist colony in Stone City, Iowa. And for the most important information, I would like you to write down, he started an artist colony in Stone City, Iowa. He started an artist colony in Stone City, Iowa. So that's the most important information. He started an artist colony in Stone City, Iowa. And so what would happen is these artists actually came to Iowa to learn from him. He eventually went on to teach at the University of Iowa until he retired. But he did a ton of paintings, wanted people to paint the Midwest region. It was a strong reaction against what was going on in Europe with the abstract movement, the modern movement. He still wanted to paint realistic scenes, yet he did, in a way, abstract his own scenes as well. This image is called Paul Revere. If we look at this, you can see the little image of Paul Revere riding his horse down by the church. Notice again, you are up high looking down on this village. As well as if you look at the very, very, very top right, you might be able to see the British coming down the road as well. So, very unique perspective when he painted. This next painting most of you should recognize. It is American Gothic. I want you to write down for the most important information as well. He painted American Gothic. He painted American Gothic. Painted American Gothic. Now, when I say American Gothic, probably most of you guys are thinking Gothic, someone who is wearing all black, the Gothic style movement. Technically, what he's referring to for Gothic is the type of window that is in the top of the house. That is a Gothic window. That was during the medieval times. That style of window was during that time period. And so that's where the word Gothic in this title of the painting comes from. Most of you guys have seen this painting before because it's been recreated so many different times throughout history. How this all started. He actually painted this for a contest in Chicago, at the Chicago Art Institute. He entered this painting. It didn't get first, didn't get second, but it actually got third. And so they actually documented this picture by taking, or painting by taking a picture of it. And most people really didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't anything special. Well, all of a sudden, a newspaper from the East Coast was writing an article about the Midwest, about how there's not really anything going on in the Midwest. And they used this picture as a reference in that article. Well, let's think about this. You guys are all Iowans. You live in Iowa. Does this painting represent you? Most of you probably would say absolutely not. And so at first, when this came out, the Midwest and Iowans specifically were outraged. That's not us. That's not who we are. Yet these East Coast and West Coast people think this is what it looks like in the Midwest. Some boring place, some mundane place. And so actually Midwest people were outraged about this painting. Slowly over time, this painting was used more and more where they would replace people's heads in the paintings. They would replace what was at the pitchfork, replace the background. You might have gone to the Iowa State Fair and seen where you could put your head in this and you could be the people. So many different times it's been recreated, and that is why it is one of the most recognized art pieces in the world, made by an Iowan, which is pretty cool to think about. When we look at this painting, there's also a sense of ambiguity. What I mean by that is there's a sense of questioning what is going on. I want you to look at this painting and think of a question that might arise as you're looking at this. Some of you may think to yourself, why is she not looking at the camera? That's an excellent question. He made it that awkwardness of, is it a feeling? Is she looking at something? It leaves you questioning what's going on and therefore makes you want to look at the painting more. Another question that might arise is, what is the relationship between these two people? Some people think it's husband and wife. Some people think it's father and daughter. Some people even think it's grandfather, granddaughter, or they're just cousins, not even related. There's a lot of questions that go on with this painting. And so that's what kind of made it famous at first as well. There's also a sense of repetition in this painting. If we look at this painting, there's shapes repeated over and over again. For instance, the oval circle shape. We see it in their faces, in her pattern of her shirt, technically in the pattern of the drapes in the window. It's a little hard to see unless you're actually looking at the painting. You could even see her medallion has that oval. If you also look at the shape of the pitchfork, it is repeated. You can see it in his bibs. If you were to turn it upside down, you might even be able to see it in the Gothic window in the background. There's a lot of other things with this painting that we'll dive into later on in the year, but it's a very, very famous painting. He painted American Gothic. That's what I want you to know. So again, it's Grant Wood, American Gothic. He established an artist colony in Stone City, Iowa in the 1930s. His style is regionalism. How we remember it? Very simply, we're going to literally say Grant, and if you point right at the pitchfork, he is holding a piece of wood. So Grant Wood. Grant Wood.